entertain.
Okay.
Go right down
So
the
if
middle
you're
of
an
the road.
entertainer,
Kevin,
no-
you're a host
no
of Shark
free
Tank.
speech rights?
Wouldn't people say the same thing about you? You're a show of a host of an entertainment
Have you
show.
ever heard me shill for a politician?
Yeah, every night when you come here.
Kevin O'Leary, the MAGA stooge, was a guest on Abby Phillip's CNN show to join a panel that also included Anna Navarro and Dr. Cornel West to talk about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension from ABC and his return to the network. Let's take a look at this clip from the debate with Kevin O'Leary and the rest on Abby Phillip's show. I'm going to add my opinions. That's what I'm doing here. And then I want to know what you think in the comments. Let's roll it.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip. Let's get right to what America's talking about. A whole new world for the kingdom. Disney announcing that Jimmy Kimmel will return to the air tomorrow night after days of backlash over his suspension. The company has been facing heavy criticism after pulling him off the air over what Disney calls ill-timed Charlie Kirk comments. But after the Trump administration threatened to punish ABC unless they did something. Today, 400 celebrities signed a letter comparing it to McCarthyism, and some Americans said they canceled their Disney Plus subscriptions. Now, we're told that Kimmel will be addressing the firestorm tomorrow, but Sinclair, one of the big owners of subsidiaries, say it'll preempt the show from the stations that it owns. Joining us in our fifth seat is Bill Carter, the former New York Times media reporter and author of The War for Late Night. So, Bill, what do you think is behind Disney bringing him back?
Well, I think Disney was pushed into the corner here. They had to make a decision. They were either going to capitulate or they're going to fight. I think they decided, given all the other circumstances, they had already conceded on the Stephanopoulos issue. They had conceded to Trump and paid off a settlement to him. And here they were. They had to either decide whether they're going to keep this star that they did like, they do back, or they're going to capitulate and give in. And I think they had no choice. I don't think Disney had a choice. This was clearly an abuse of power, and they could not give in. Otherwise, it would continue, and they just had to stand up for it. Not just because of who they are as a company, but sort of as the principle of it. I really don't think someone like Bob Iger, who has taken his reputation very seriously, the head of Disney, by the way, was going to concede that he ought to now basically say, all right, I'll agree, and I'll take away a star who I don't think did anything that seriously wrong.
Backlash to the backlash to the backlash. I mean, I think at the end of the day, one of the big original sins of this whole saga is the Trump administration deciding to make it clear to the whole world that they wanted to be involved. I almost imagine if they had not done that, this would have ended completely differently. Kimmel and Disney would have dealt with this behind closed doors. Maybe he would have been suspended for a few days. They would have dealt with the affiliates and we would be moving on. But Disney was forced to respond to the assumption many people have, which is that this was an attempt of the government to chill speech, which I think, for a lot of Americans, they don't like that.
I've been doing television for a lot of years. The only thing that matters long term, ratings. Tomorrow night, who's ever writing that monologue for him, he's going to get his best score in decades.
Probably.
Everybody in America is going to be tuning in. They're going to score huge ratings, and that's what matters on TV.
I agree with Kevin O'Leary on virtually nothing, but I will concede that point. I think that he is correct on that point.
Secondly, to consider, I go back to an interview with Johnny Carson, I think it was in the early 80s, when he said, I don't get into politics because why would I want to piss off 50% of my audience? And I think all comedians should think about that. They're entertainers, and they want to entertain people who had a long day. They want to be lifted up, hear something funny. They don't want to be dragged down in the toilet of politics. Michael Jordan said, I want to sell sneakers to Republicans too. I mean, what is this stuff? Entertainers entertain. Why get into this whole thing of partisan politics? I think that's the lesson of this Kimmel thing. I think he'll do very well tomorrow night. Long term, ratings will matter for him, like everybody else. But the lesson to everybody is, if you're an entertainer, a musician, entertain. Okay. Go right down the middle of the road.
Kevin, you're a host of Shark Tank. Wouldn't people say the same thing about you? You're a show of a host of an entertainment
Have you
show.
ever heard me shill for a politician?
Yeah, every night when you come here.
I shill for policy. I'm a policy wonk. I don't get on stage saying, vote for this man.
I think Kevin O'Leary kind of teed that zinger up for Anna Navarro. That's a pretty sick burn. High five. Couple of things. Kevin O'Leary is constantly shilling for Donald Trump. He goes on Abby Phillip's show here a lot. He's on Piers Morgan a lot. He's on Shark Tank. He's a Canadian citizen. He's not even American, but he is very, very consistently praising the Trump administration. Yes, praising Trump's policies, but also painting it as a personality thing. So for him to say, I don't shill for a politician is sort of absurd to me. Another thing Kevin O'Leary talks about here is that entertainers should stop talking about politics and just stick to entertaining. Shut up and dribble is another way of saying this when you're dealing with athletes. But what's really interesting to me is that, Donald Trump is a politician. He's the president of the United States. He has never shied away from using his platform as a celebrity, and certainly not now. I mean, he's got a whole social media thing that he started, Truth Social, in order to voice his opinions. And they use that as a defense. They're like, well, I don't have a problem with the president having an opinion. Talk about bully pulpit. I mean, this has been unprecedented in so many ways compared to presidents of the past. They don't want entertainers. They don't want athletes to voice their opinion, but they have no problem with the president of the United States swinging his weight around, not just voicing opinions. They're veiled threats. Hey, be a shame if something happened to your show here, right? So the hypocrisy of this is just sickening, and it's true to form. I also think it's, Kevin O'Leary says this with a straight face, and I think Anna Navarro points it out in a funny way, but the hypocrisy of it is just absolutely absurd. But Johnny Carson himself made jokes about presidents all the time. Now, I agree that what Saturday Night Live does, what Jimmy Kimmel does, what Seth Meyers does, is more overtly political commentary. Stephen Colbert, right? All of these shows, the climate has changed. I would argue that the comedy of late night has responded to extremism in politics rather than being the cause of a swing to the extremes in politics. I don't have a thesis ready to back that up, but, again, I want to know what you think in the comments, but let's keep watching.
And this woman, I say, here's what their policies do to American entrepreneurs.
But you,
Good, bad,
all right, Pop.
You know what?
Kettle says hello.
Goodness, I'm
But
here.
Kevin, I mean, you are a guest here a lot, and I've heard you strongly criticize Democratic politicians. Maybe you don't shill for one
their
politician.
policy.
No, I know. I've heard you make. I've heard you make personal comments about Democratic politicians right here at this table. But to Anna's point, you have free speech rights just like everybody else does.
Right.
Are they not allowed? You're allowed to do it? Why is nobody? Why
Johnny
are comedians
Carson
not allowed?
Was down the middle mostly, but if you were president, he made fun of you. He made fun of you if you were president. He did politics, in terms of a joke. If you were president, you were made fun of. And the presidents did not then get their back up and say, we got to stop that. I don't like him doing that, because he was Johnny Carson.
And listen, one of the longest running comedy shows in history, Saturday Night
Absolutely.
Live, has been making fun
of presidents forever. Absolutely.
Of every,
and presidents have always, and Abraham Lincoln had political cartoons made about him, and he didn't say close down the newspapers.
I don't think SNL.
And if you were here in the 90s, Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
I mean, but the other thing, I mean, look, maybe what you're saying is true, but Sinclair, one of the owners of these affiliates, they were planning to air this lengthy Charlie Kirk special in place of Jimmy Kimmel. And guess what? They didn't do it. They backpedaled and they dropped those plans and aired Family Feud instead. If it was so crystal clear that viewers really wanted more politics, but just right-leaning politics, why did Sinclair back off that?
Now, I don't know that Sinclair backed off of that. In fact, Sinclair has actually made quite a stand by saying we're not going to be we're preempting Jimmy Kimmel's show tomorrow
Right,
night.
but they were going to air on Friday a documentary. They said in their whole statement about Jimmy Kimmel, they were like, we're going to air this documentary instead, and then they didn't do it.
And I don't have an answer for that, but I can tell you this, the conversation at the table tonight has not even touched on the fact that what Jimmy Kimmel did was insult an entire half of the nation and a grieving widow and people who had lost someone that was dear to them and a voice that was lost to America. And this was not about free speech, about politics. This was about somebody making a horrible decision.
What was the insult?
It was a horrible decision for him to come out and say that the murder was unrelated to what it really is, a leftist ideology that attacks someone who is a conservative ideology. And everybody knows that. And instead, he insulted half of
Charlie Kirk,
but what he did was he insulted half of America that was in the middle of grieving over the loss of someone we revered.
But can I tell you something?
Once again, I mean, I think this is a showcase for MAGA's hyperbole and the sense of grievance that's the heart of this movement. The idea that half of the country was mourning Charlie Kirk, it's not half the country. It's not half the country. Most of the people in this country didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was. I wouldn't know who Charlie Kirk was if I didn't do these videos, if he wasn't such a conservative firebrand. He has something of a remarkable story, right? As a young man, he founded Turning Point USA and went to the college campuses to do these, started with the sort of Change My Mind, which is where they start really beating the drum with he was an advocate of free speech. He said some pretty despicable stuff in addition to quoting the works, the teachings of Jesus Christ. So let's not make him a saint just yet. But there was a meme somebody sent me today that was basically like Charlie Kirk was a podcaster. He wasn't Nelson Mandela. I don't think mainstream America really understood who Charlie Kirk was or even had any awareness of him. If you listened to his podcast or if you were part of this college demographic that hadn't previously voted, but then turned out in this last election for Trump, that you knew who he was. And certainly if you were part of the right, you were looking for every little piece of this quilt stitching together to get these votes. He was certainly praised the Trump administration, and that got him in their good graces. That's why they are lionizing him now, not because he represented some lofty ideal of free speech.
You have to also look and say, what is the FCC even for?
But can I say
the
something?
FCC is a licensing body.
Last night, that grieving widow, with incredible grace and compassion that I think I wouldn't be capable of,
I agree,
came out and said that she forgave the killer.
It was amazing.
Of the man who killed her two babies. So I would say that if you're going to honor the Kirks, if you're going to honor what they stood for in terms of, and I disagree vehemently with a lot of the things he said, but he stood for free speech. And so I don't understand how the way to honor a man who stood for debate and free speech is to stifle free speech and penalize.
But the piece
I don't
you're
understand
missing,
how we can admire Erica Kirk for so gracefully forgiving the man who killed the father of her two babies, and we can't forgive a comedian for a lead-in to a joke.
Trump is not the one who said get him off the air. Disney made a business decision. They have a fiduciary obligation to their shareholders, to their affiliate stations, and to their advertisers.
But Phil, we were all here. Phil, we were all here when the FCC chairman went on a podcast and said we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Which is what the FCC is supposed to do.
No.
Let's all right, hold on. Let me just play the Rand. Let me play what Rand Paul had to. I'm going to play what Rand Paul had to say about this because he was asked specifically about Brendan Carr's comments and whether or not that's what the FCC should be doing. Listen.
Senator, do you believe that Brendan Carr's comments were appropriate?
Absolutely inappropriate. Brendan Carr's got no business weighing in on this. But people have to also realize that despicable comments, you have the right to say them, but you don't have the right to employment. And the FCC was wrong to weigh in, and I'll fight any attempt by the government to get involved with speech.
Right.
All right. So look, it's pretty clear. The FCC doesn't have a role in saying, oh, Jimmy Kimmel, I don't like what you said. We're going to threaten your broadcast license. And sure, ABC has a right to suspend their host, even to fire him. But by putting himself in the middle of that, which he did intentionally, that changed the game. in this conversation. And I really do think it probably changed the game for Disney in terms of how they wanted this to end, in terms of how quickly they needed this to end and bring Jimmy Kimmel back.
No, I think that if we were to start with, again, the moment of forgiveness of Sister Erica, where we had a moment of interruption in a polarized society and really a spiritually decayed culture.
I think your microphone just slipped into your jacket.
Oh, is that right?
Move it up. All right.
And what I was really saying was...
Okay. All right, I'll give you a moment to just fix your microphone, but I promise I'll come back to you.
Cornell is fishing for his microphone. I am very happy that this seems to be getting resolved, or it's moving towards a resolution, because, you know, we talk a lot about Kimmel, we talk a lot about Colbert. They're going to be okay, but there are hundreds of people that work on those shows. There's over 200 people that work on the Kimmel show, and these are people that were hurt badly because of COVID and shows being with skeletal crews. These were people that were hurt badly by the writer's strike that hurt so many TV shows. And so, you know, it's not just Kimmel you're hurting.
Yeah. And
it's a lot of American families.
Go ahead.
I'm back. I appreciate that, brother. No, that when you have a moment of interruption, given the love of money tied to greed, bottom line, revenues and eyeballs, and the hatred escalating, deep distrust on both teams, Republicans and Democrats. How do you sustain that kind of moment of interruption? Because forgiveness is a form of love. John Coltrane's birthday tomorrow, love supreme. How do you sustain those moments to push back the forces of hatred, push back the forces of greed, push back the forces of distrust? And the only way you do it is by more examples in which people are able to say, I mean, Jimmy Kimmel, for me, you know, I don't spend a lot of time on the brother. I don't think he's the most talented brother either. Now, that's one of the few times I might agree with Brother Trump. He's not the most talented brother. And even that slot itself doesn't have too many people of color. So, I mean, they do what they want to do. But I will defend his right to speak. Just like I defend this brother's right to be wrong or right, because that's a libertarian issue. It's a libertarian issue.
And I think
it's an American issue, Cornell.
Well, it's a human issue. It
is the First Amendment to the Constitution. The First Amendment that was made to the Constitution was about freedom of the press and freedom of speech.
So we've dealt with the
slavery.
I know, but we have dealt with the legalities of it.
Absolutely, but it's human. I want to keep it at the deeper human. I don't want flag waving. I want love, justice at the center of it.
Listen, I to your point, right? There's a lot of legalities of it. I think it's super important to talk about what should the role of the government be versus what should the role of a private company be. But then there's Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, the human being. What should he do? What does he owe the country in this moment when he does come back?
Well, I think he's going to come out and say something conciliatory. He's not going to apologize in a formal way, and he's certainly not going to give at the insistence of the Sinclair people to give a donation. I think that's kind of over the top. And he's a very strong-minded guy, Jimmy. I know him well, and he's a very good guy. He offered a very heartfelt comment to the family before any of this happened, by the way. So I expect him to be very strong, because he didn't bend here. This is an interesting thing. I think he would have been on the air already if he just came on and abjectly apologized. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to try to clarify this and say, and I think he thinks that he didn't say anything that was the sickest conduct possible, which is the way the FCC guy said it. I think he was, by the way, he didn't know about the actual case, the prosecution's case on Monday
night.
So he was making a comment irrespective of that. So, and he's not the kind of person who would ever attack or demean a person after this kind of tragedy. So I think that's misrepresenting him. I understand people are hurt about it. I understand that. But I would not expect Jimmy Kimmel to be, prostrate with apology. Yeah, that's not his style.
All right, well, we'll all be watching tomorrow night.
I want him to entertain.
We'll all be watching.
So Kevin O'Leary trying to sneak in one last, it's about entertainment. They shouldn't do politics. They should entertain. Jimmy Kimmel and late night in general has skewed more political over the years, I think, as politics has gotten more extreme. I said it before. I just want to reference something else. What did Jimmy Kimmel say that was so horrible? I think because they act like he drew a picture of Allah. It's like, I go back and I watch the offending clip. I didn't see him say anything. He wasn't mocking Charlie Kirk. He wasn't insulting Charlie Kirk. He was talking about MAGA doing everything they can to score political points off of this guy's death. And now that he's come back, if you watch that, I think his assertion that he doesn't feel any joy or glee at this poor man's death, it seems very sincere and heartfelt to me. I think what they said in this clip was, it's a left-wing ideology accusing a right-wing ideology. What's the left-wing ideology? Right? What's this left-wing ideology that they are rushing to paint as radical left extremism? Because to me, and I call this channel Progressive Perspective, I don't even think I'm particularly far left. I feel I'm just sort of common sense middle of the road, and I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when some of my people who are more right-leaning, some of the people I know, accuse me of being a lefty. I don't think it's lefty to want better healthcare. I don't think it's lefty to want better education. I don't think it's lefty to point out that there is a flagrantly dysfunctional wealth inequality gap. That doesn't make me a communist. That doesn't make me a socialist. You know, there's even some stuff that Zoran Mandani talks about that I'm kind of like, my eyebrows go up and I go, I mean, if the people want that, that seems a little socialist to me, but I'm also like, you know what? If everybody's on the same page and you get elected and you want to try some of these things as an experiment, if it works, great. So we found something that works. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work and we'll take it away. It'll stop happening, right? I don't think he's Karl Marx. But I just think it's everybody should be able to live together in dignity and peace with some mutual respect. I don't think that's radical. I don't think it's radical to look at 60% of this country living paycheck to paycheck when one man, Elon Musk, now owns so much wealth that's more, him alone is more than 60% of the rest of the country owns. If you, like, I don't know anything about cars, but if you were to open up the hood of a car and the engine looked like somebody had shot a bazooka through it, you go, well, that's busted. I mean, one man controlling more wealth than the bottom 60% of the entire country of 350 million people or whatever it is, that's broken on its face. Like, that's just broken. And it doesn't come into moral, like, well, he earned. It's not a moral thing. And it's not even about Elon Musk. It's about a single person controlling that much wealth relative to the rest of the nation. It's just dysfunctional. So what you do about it can be up for debate, but it has to start from a place of being like, okay, well, this isn't working. This isn't going to work. And something needs to be done about this. I don't think that's radical. I don't think that's radically left. I don't think the things that Bernie Sanders says are radically left. Universal health care is something that all of the other first world countries in the world have, except us. It's just, I feel like it's bizarro world. But, you know, I don't know. And Kevin O'Leary doesn't seem like a bad guy. He just seems like a big dope. He just seems like a rich guy that's completely out of touch. I think that the wealthy in this country are completely out of touch with what it's like to be a day-to-day working stiff. And forget about the single moms with 2 jobs, right? Forget about the people who are living on the knife's edge. But living paycheck to paycheck is a stressful existence. And it 1000% doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to be this way. The Republicans will, you know, they'll constantly be like, well, we don't have the money. We can't afford it. There's plenty of money. There's plenty of money. It's just that 400 families have it all. And if you want to zero it in, there's like 5 guys that have most of that. That's fundamentally broken. And I don't think what's radical is that we've let it get this far. We have to get money out of politics. And I know that's easier said than done. But I agree with Bernie Sanders on that. That's the root of all of the evils. And then, there's a bunch of other stuff to fix along the way. Anyway, here I am ranting again. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments? I mean, have I missed something obvious? Am I being too hard on Kevin O'Leary? Hannah Navarro got a pretty sick burn in there. And I've been doing a lot of Abby Phillip. I've taken a real shine to Abby Phillip. I think she does a pretty good job with that show. And I like this clip because Scott Jennings isn't on it. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments.